Chapter 1. The First Cities Rise. Long ago, before cars, before phones, before even the idea of a country, there was only land, water, and sky. And between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, something new began. People had always moved from place to place. They hunted animals. They gathered fruits. They followed the seasons. But then, something changed. They stopped. They stayed. They looked at the earth and said, "We can grow food here. We can build homes. We can make a life." This land was called Mesopotamia. It means the land between rivers. And here, the first cities in human history were born. The sun rose over the flat brown land. Fields stretched far into the distance. Mud brick houses stood side by side, close together, safe behind strong city walls. One city was called Uruk. Another was Ur. Their names sound old, almost like a whisper from the past. But these cities were full of life. Children played in the dust. Women baked bread in hot ovens. Men carried water from the river. Farmers bent low in their fields, planting seeds by hand. Inside the city, people worked with clay. They shaped pots, bricks, and something more. They began to write, not with pencils or pens, not with paper, but with sharp sticks pressed into soft clay tablets. They made marks, lines, symbols. This was the beginning of writing. A man sat in a small room, bent over a tablet. He was a scribe, someone who knew the marks. He whispered to himself, "1 jar of grain, for the temple, 1 goat given to the priest." This writing wasn't for poems yet, not for stories, not yet. It was for trade, money, rules. It was the first step. The people of Mesopotamia watched the sky. Every night, stars appeared above them, bright, cold, silent. They looked for signs. They believed the stars could speak, could show the future. Priests climbed high towers called ziggurats. From up there, they watched the stars and the moon. "Why do the rivers flood?" they asked. "Why does the sun disappear? Why do people die?" They told stories about gods and monsters. They said the gods lived in the sky or deep under the earth, and the gods wanted things, food, song, respect, so people prayed, gave gifts, sang to the sky. But not all was peace. One day, a man named Gilgamesh became king of Uruk. He was strong, proud, and some said, part god. He built tall walls, great temples. He made the city powerful. But he was not a kind king. People said, "Gilgamesh is too proud. He takes what he wants." So the gods created a wild man, Enkidu, to stop him. Enkidu came from the forest. He was strong like an animal, but he had a good heart. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu met, they fought. The fight shook the city, but neither won. They became friends. Together they faced monsters. They crossed deserts. They searched for the secret of life. But one day, Enkidu died. Gilgamesh cried. He screamed to the heavens. He said, "Why must we die? Why do the gods take everything?" He searched for answers. He looked for a way to live forever. But in the end, he could not escape death. He returned to Uruk, older, quieter, and wise. He looked at the city walls he built and said, This is my story. I cannot live forever, but my name will." That story, the story of Gilgamesh, is one of the oldest stories ever written. It was found on clay tablets, thousands of years old, in the ruins of those first cities. Can you imagine it? The hands that made those marks, the voice that spoke those words, gone. But the story remains. Mesopotamia gave us more than cities. It gave us laws, kings, writing, stories. It gave us time, dividing the day into 60 minutes, the circle into 360 degrees. But life there was not easy. Floods came without warning. Crops failed. There was hunger, war, pain. Yet still, the people built. They dreamed. They left their mark on the world. The first cities rose from mud and water. They rose from fear, from hope, from need. And when we walk through a city today, when we look at the stars, when we write, speak, or pray, we still hear them, the voices of the first people, calling across time. Chapter 2. Pharaohs and the River of Life. The river was everything. The Nile. It moved through the land like a long, slow heartbeat, giving life, bringing change. Without the Nile, Egypt was only desert, empty, dry. But with it came water, food, people, and power. Every year the river rose, and every year the people waited. Would the flood be good? Would their crops grow? Would their children eat? They watched the river closely. They prayed to the gods. And when the water came, they worked hard. They dug canals. They planted seeds. They built a kingdom. But this was not just any kingdom. This was the land of the Pharaohs. They wore gold on their heads. They sat on high thrones. And the people believed. They were not just men. They were gods. Living gods, walking the earth. When the Pharaoh spoke, it was law. When the Pharaoh died, he became something more. Not gone, not forgotten, but eternal. A young man stood on a boat, drifting down the Nile. He looked to the east, where the sun rose, then to the west, where the dead were buried. His name was Kessi. He was a worker, a simple man. But he was going to the most important place in Egypt, the place of the Pharaoh's tomb. The pyramid. From far away, the pyramid looked like a mountain of stone. But Kessi knew. Every block was cut by hand, pulled, pushed, lifted, one by one. It took years. Sometimes it took a lifetime. Kessi wiped sweat from his face. The sun burned hot above him. He thought, why do we build such huge tombs? Why must one man live forever while the rest of us break our backs in the sun? But he didn't say it out loud. No one did. The Pharaoh was holy. His tomb had to be perfect. Inside the tomb, everything was ready. There were golden cups, painted walls, statues of gods, and a long, dark coffin. The priest said, "This is not the end. The Pharaoh will wake in the next world. He will walk again." They believed in the afterlife, a life after death, a place of peace, of joy. But only for those who passed the test. The heart of the dead would be weighed. If it was light, full of truth, they would live forever. But if it was heavy, full of lies and evil, it would be eaten by a monster, gone, forever. Egypt had many gods. Ra, the sun god. Osiris, the god of the dead. Isis, the goddess of magic and love. Every day, people prayed. They gave gifts. They asked for rain, for safety, for life. And the Pharaoh, they believed, stood between the gods and the people. When the river rose, when the crops grew, they said, "The gods are happy." But when the river stayed low, when hunger came, they asked, "Have we done something wrong?" Years passed. Kessi grew old. He watched new pharaohs rise and fall. He saw rich men become poor. He saw poor men become soldiers. He saw war, famine, peace. One night, he sat by the river, quiet, and said to his grandson, "They will remember the kings, the wars, the gold, but they won't remember me." His grandson looked up. "I will," he said, "and I will tell my son, and he will tell his." Kessi smiled. Centuries later, explorers came to Egypt. They found tombs under the sand. They found writing on walls, pictures and symbols called hieroglyphs. They found mummies, bodies wrapped in cloth, sleeping in silence. And they asked, who were these people? What did they believe? Why did they build such wonders? And slowly, Egypt spoke again. Through the stones, through the stories, through the river that still flows. The pyramids still stand. The Nile still moves. And the voice of ancient Egypt still whispers in the wind. I lived. I dreamed. I built something that lasts. Chapter 3. The Fire of Persia. Far to the east, beyond deserts, mountains, and wide plains, a new power rose. Its name was Persia, and it burned like fire. Not fire that destroys, but fire that gives light, that warms, that leads the way. The first great king was Cyrus. He was strong, but not cruel. He fought hard, yes, but he did not want to break people. He wanted to bring them together. When Cyrus took a city, he did not burn it. He said, "Keep your gods, keep your language, keep your ways." And the people listened. Some even called him a hero. Even the Jews, taken from their homeland by an earlier empire, were set free. Cyrus let them go home. He became known as Cyrus the Great. His empire grew and grew. From the rivers of Mesopotamia to the valleys of India, from the mountains of the north to the blue waters of the Mediterranean. So many lands, so many people. And somehow, they all stood under one name, Persia. In the heart of the empire stood a city called Persepolis. It meant the city of Persians. There were tall columns, wide stone steps, lions carved in rock, and inside, gold, silver, walls painted with warriors, horses, and kings. At the center, the palace, and walking through that golden hall was a new king. His name was Darius. Darius ruled a kingdom so big no one man could see it all. So he divided it. He made roads. He sent messages by fast horsemen. He put smart men in charge, governors, not fighters. He said, "Let every man pay taxes, but also let every man be heard." And the people, even those far away, began to trust him. The Persians believed in one God above all, Ahura Mazda, the God of light, truth, and order. But always, always, there was an enemy, a dark force called Angra Mainyu, the spirit of lies, of chaos. This belief came from a wise man named Zarathustra. He taught that life is a battle, a choice between good and evil. Every day, people had to choose to tell the truth or a lie, to help or to hurt, to build or destroy. This idea burned deep in the hearts of the Persian people. But not everyone wanted peace. In the west, the Greeks watched Persia grow, and they feared it. They called the Persians barbarians, but they also feared their power, their size, their strength. Soon, there was war. Ships crossed the sea. Spears broke on shields. Arrows flew in the wind. And at a place called Marathon, the Persians were stopped. Not destroyed, but stopped. And for the first time, the fire shook. Years later, Darius died. His son, Xerxes, became king. He wanted revenge. He built a giant army, crossed the sea on wooden bridges. He marched into Greece with fire in his eyes. He took Athens, burned its temples. But again, the Greeks fought back. At sea, their small ships beat the great Persian fleet, and Xerxes returned home, not as a hero, but as a man who had lost. Still, the Persian Empire lived on. It stayed strong for many years. It stayed proud. But in time, even fire fades. New powers rose. New wars came. And one day, a young man from the west came riding with fire in his eyes. Alexander. He came fast. He came hard. And he brought the Persian Empire to its end. But Persia was never truly gone. Its language, its art, its ideas, they stayed. Even today, people remember the kindness of Cyrus, the wisdom of Darius, the belief in truth, in light, in choosing good, and in the land where fire once burned so bright. The wind still whispers the names of the kings. The golden halls are quiet now, but the story still lives. We ruled not by fear, but by respect. We fought not for gold, but for unity. We were Persia, and we still are. Chapter 4. A New Faith in the Desert. The sun was high. The sand burned hot underfoot. The wind blew dry across the empty hills. This was Arabia, a land of dust, of silence, and deep, endless sky. For many years, the people here lived in small tribes. They moved from place to place, following water and trade. They believed in many gods, spirits in rocks, trees, and stars. But deep in their hearts, some wondered, is there something more? Something greater? In the city of Mecca, traders came from far and wide. Camels carried spices, gold, cloth. People sold, bought, argued, and prayed. One man watched them quietly. His name was Muhammad. He was kind, honest. People called him Al-Amin, the trustworthy. But he felt something deep inside. There must be more to life than this, he thought. There must be truth. So he climbed a mountain. He went into a cave, and there, in the stillness, everything changed. He said an angel came to him. The angel said, "Read." Muhammad answered, "I cannot read." But the angel repeated, "Read, in the name of your Lord." And from that moment, a new light began to shine. Muhammad went back to Mecca. His heart was full. His voice was clear. He said, "There is only one God. Not many, not statues, not stars. One God." He called this God Allah, the Arabic word for God. He said, "God is near. God sees you. God hears you. And He wants peace." But not everyone listened. The leaders of Mecca were angry. They said, "You are breaking our ways. You insult our gods." They laughed at him. They threw stones. They tried to stop him. But Muhammad did not stop. Years passed. More people believed. Not just the poor, but also the strong, the rich, the wise. They listened to his words, words full of meaning, full of beauty. Words that would later become the Quran, the holy book of Islam. When life in Mecca became too dangerous, Muhammad left. He and his followers traveled to a new city, Medina. This journey is called the Hijrah. It was not easy. They crossed hot deserts, hungry and afraid, but they carried hope in their hearts. In Medina, they were welcomed, and there, Islam began to grow. But Mecca would not forget. Armies came. Battles were fought. And finally, after many years, Muhammad returned to Mecca, not with hate, not with revenge, but with peace. He walked into the city. He went to the Kaaba, the sacred cube-shaped building, and he removed the idols inside. He said, "Truth has come. Falsehood has gone." Soon, Islam spread across Arabia. Not just a religion, but a way of life. Muslims prayed 5 times a day. They gave to the poor. They fasted during the month of Ramadan. They believed in kindness, in justice, in mercy. They believed all people were equal in the eyes of God. Muhammad was not rich. He did not live in a palace. He ate simply. He worked with his hands. He said, "The best of you are those who are best in character." And when he died, he left no gold, no crown, only his words, his example, and his message. But that message changed the world. From Arabia, it reached Syria, Egypt, Persia, and beyond. Cities like Damascus, Cairo and Baghdad became centers of knowledge and faith. People of many lands, many languages, became Muslims. They prayed in different tongues, but to the same God. Even today, over 1 billion people follow Islam. They still say the words Muhammad said, "There is no God but God. Muhammad is the messenger of God." They still feel the fire he lit in the desert so long ago, and the wind still moves over the sands, whispering his name, not as a king, not as a warrior, but as a man who believed. That one voice can bring peace, that faith can change hearts, that even in the heat of the desert, hope can rise. Know if you'd like this formatted as a performance script, or if you're ready for Chapter 5, Golden Cities, Great Minds. Chapter 5, Golden Cities, Great Minds. The desert had spoken, Islam had spread, and now something new was rising. Not just a religion, but a civilization. In the city of Damascus, white stone glowed in the sun. Markets were full. People spoke in many tongues: Arabic, Persian, Greek. This was the home of the Umayyads, the first great Muslim empire. From Spain to India, their empire stretched wide. They ruled fast, strong, and with pride. But they wanted more than land. They wanted beauty. They wanted greatness. And they began to build palaces with golden walls, mosques with tall minarets, courtyards with fountains that sang softly in the heat. And in these cities came something even greater: ideas. Then a new dynasty took over, the Abbasids. They moved the capital to a new place, Baghdad, and Baghdad became a jewel. By the river, the city shone with color and light. People called it the City of Peace. But it was more than that. It was a city of knowledge. Everywhere, people read. They taught. They asked questions. What is the shape of the earth? How do numbers work? What makes the stars move? And someone would answer, "Let's find out." In the House of Wisdom, books came from all over the world. From Greece, from India, from Egypt. They were translated into Arabic, studied, debated. Scientists, doctors, poets, and dreamers worked side by side. A young boy named Ali walked the streets of Baghdad. He looked up at the sky and asked, "How far is the moon?" He saw men with scrolls, ink-stained fingers, and long beards laughing under trees. He asked, "What are they talking about?" His father smiled. "They are building the future," he said, "with words." One man wrote about medicine. He said, "Wash your hands before touching a patient." Another drew maps of the stars, giving them names still used today. A woman taught math to boys and girls, numbers from India, symbols that changed the world. And poets wrote verses that made people weep or laugh or dream. Baghdad was rich, not only in gold, but in thought. It welcomed people of many faiths, Muslims, Jews, Christians. They lived, studied, and worked together. It was not perfect, but for a moment in time, it was something rare, a place where the mind could fly. But every light casts a shadow. With wealth came greed. With power came jealousy. Some forgot the message of justice. Some ruled with fear, not wisdom. Palaces grew bigger. Poor homes grew smaller. People began to ask, "Is this what we wanted?" One night, Ali's father came home late. His eyes were tired. He said, "The vizier only listens to the rich now. The books are still there, but fewer people are reading." Ali looked down. "But I still want to learn." His father touched his shoulder. "Then do. Never stop." And outside the city, danger grew. New enemies watched, waited. They saw gold, they saw power, and they made plans. Years later, war came to Baghdad. The streets that once echoed with music grew silent. The libraries burned. Books full of knowledge and light turned to ash. It was a deep, painful wound. But not the end. Because ideas do not die so easily. The books that survived were carried east and west, to Spain, to Africa, to Europe, and the wisdom of Baghdad spread. Doctors used the old texts. Scientists followed the stars. Poets still whispered ancient lines under the moonlight. The empire changed. Cities rose and fell. But the dream of a place where minds could grow free, still lives, and maybe somewhere. A child like Ali still walks under the stars, still asks, "How far is the moon?" and still believes. The answer is out there, waiting. Chapter 6. The Ottoman Dream. It began with a small tribe. In the cold hills of Anatolia, they rode on horseback. They were strong, proud, and few. Their leader was named Osman. He had a dream, a strange and powerful dream. He saw a tree growing from his chest, wide and tall. Its branches reached across lands, rivers, seas, and he said, "This is our future. We will build an empire." And they did. That tribe became the Ottomans, That dream became a kingdom, then an empire, then a world power. They ruled for more than 600 years, longer than Rome, longer than the British Empire. It was called the Ottoman Empire. They took cities, one by one. They crossed mountains, sailed the seas. They reached North Africa, Arabia, Eastern Europe, and then came the greatest prize of all. Constantinople. It was the jewel of the East, a city with strong walls and deep history. Many had tried to take it. None had won. But the Ottomans had something new: cannon fire. The young Sultan, Mehmed II, only 21 years old, stood at the gates. He said, "We will take this city, or die trying." The ground shook. The sky turned red with flame. And at last, the walls fell. Constantinople became Istanbul. A new capital, a new beginning. The empire grew rich. Sultans wore robes of silk and gold. They ruled from great palaces with gardens and fountains. Their voices echoed in long halls. Their flags flew across 3 continents. But there was more than just war. There was culture, poetry, music. Article mosques rose like mountains. Domes shone in the sun. And inside those mosques, silence, prayer, peace. One sultan stood above the rest, Suleiman the Magnificent. They called him the lawgiver. He ruled with justice and strength. His empire was powerful, but also full of learning. He welcomed artists, poets, thinkers. He said, "A great empire is more than a sword. It needs a soul." And under his rule, the Ottoman dream was alive. But no dream lasts forever. Time passed. New enemies rose. The world changed. Ships, guns, ideas. The Ottomans were slow to change. Inside the palace, some sultans grew lazy, too rich, too afraid. Advisors whispered lies. Power stayed with the few. And outside, the empire began to crack. A boy named Yusuf walked the streets of Istanbul. He heard stories of Suleiman, of brave soldiers, of golden times. But he looked around and saw poverty, old buildings, broken roads. He asked his grandfather, "Where is the glory now?" The old man sighed. "It is in the stories, and in our hearts, but not in our world." Wars came, then more wars. Some were lost, some were won, but always the empire grew weaker. The world moved faster. The Ottomans could not keep up. Europe became stronger. Russia pushed south. New nations rose from old land, and the people began to ask, "Why do we obey? Why are we poor? Why do the sultans not listen?" In the 1800s, reform came too late. The empire was now called the sick man of Europe. It limped through the years, wounded, tired, fading, and then came World War I. The final blow. When the war ended, the empire was gone. Its lands were divided. Its leaders were lost. Its dream broken, but not dead. From the ashes, a new country rose. Turkey, led by a man named Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. It looked forward, not back. The Ottomans were over, but their legacy remained. Their buildings, their language, their culture, still alive. Even today, the Ottoman dream whispers through time. In the stones of Istanbul, in the shadow of old palaces, in the sound of a call to prayer echoing at dawn. We ruled for centuries. We fell with pride, and we are not forgotten. Chapter 7. Foreign Flags and Broken Promises. The war was over. The guns were silent. The world had changed. It was called the Great War, World War I. Millions were dead. Empires had fallen. The Ottomans were gone, and the land they left behind became a prize. Europe looked at the Middle East, not with love, not with care, but with plans. Leaders sat around big tables. They looked at maps. They drew lines with pens, blue lines, red lines, dotted lines, borders, agreements, deals made in secret. And they said, "This part will go to Britain. That part will go to France." But no one asked the people who lived there. A man in Syria woke up one morning and found a foreign flag flying over his town. In Iraq, a family saw soldiers speaking a language they didn't understand. In Palestine, promises were made to two different peoples at the same time. And in every city, whispers began. They promised us freedom. They said we would rule ourselves. But they lied. Before the war, the Arabs had helped the British. They fought the Ottomans with the hope of freedom. They believed the letters, the words, the handshakes. They believed the dream. But after the war, they saw the truth. They were not getting a new future. They were getting new rulers. In 1916, there was a secret deal, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Two men, one British, one French, decided how to divide the Middle East. They did not know the people. They did not care. And still, they drew the lines. Lines that cut through villages, lines that split tribes, lines that made new countries with old pain. In Palestine, things grew worse. The British made a promise to support a home for the Jews, the Balfour Declaration. But they also promised to respect the rights of the Arabs who already lived there. How could both promises be true? The tension began to grow, like a storm waiting to break. In Lebanon, in Egypt, in Syria, people marched. They shouted in the streets. We want our land back. We want our voices heard. Some used words. Others used weapons. But everywhere there was the same feeling. Betrayal. A boy named Kareem watched his father burn a British flag. Not in hate, but in heartbreak. He asked, "Why did they come, Baba?" His father looked down. "Not for us, son. Not for us." Years passed. New governments were built, but under foreign eyes. Kings were chosen, not by the people, but by men in suits, far away. Papers were signed, treaties made. But the people didn't forget. They couldn't, because the flags were still foreign, and the promises still broken. Some fought back. Some gave up. Some tried to build a new future, slowly, painfully. But it was not easy. Because when you draw lines on a map, you also draw wounds. And wounds take time to heal. Still, hope remained. In schools and coffee houses, young people asked questions. What if we rise up? What if we speak louder? What if we take back our story? And in the corners of dusty libraries, in secret meetings, in songs sung quietly at night, a new dream began to grow. Not a dream of empire, not a dream of kings, but a dream of freedom. Real freedom, where voices mattered, where maps were not written by strangers, where the future belonged to them. That dream was still far away, but it was there, waiting. And the foreign flags, some would fall, others would stay a little longer, but no flag, no promise could erase the truth. The people remembered. They still do. Chapter 8. A land divided. It is a small land. Green hills, olive trees, dry valleys. A land where the sun burns hot, and history runs deep. It's called Palestine. For some, it's the land of their ancestors. For others, it became the land of survival. For both, it is home. But it became a land divided. After World War II, the world was broken. Cities were in ruins. Millions were dead. And the Jewish people, after facing the horror of the Holocaust, were searching for safety. They had lost everything. Their homes, their families, their place in the world. They needed a new beginning, a place to call home. Many looked to Palestine, a land they believed was promised, a land with deep spiritual meaning. They called it Zion, a hope, a return. And they came, by boat, by foot, through fear and sea and silence. They came. But Palestine was not empty. It was already home to Arab families, farms, towns, mosques, churches, markets, children playing in the streets, fathers working the land, mothers cooking, singing, laughing. They had lived there for generations, and they were not asked. The United Nations had a plan. Divide the land. One part for Jews, one part for Arabs. 2 peoples, 2 states. But how do you divide a land that both sides love, that both sides live in? Can you split a home and keep it whole? In 1948, the plan became reality. The State of Israel was declared. Jewish people celebrated. After years of pain, they had a home, a country, a future. But for Palestinians, it was something else. They called it Nakba, the catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands were forced to leave their homes. Some ran in fear. Some were pushed out. Some hoped to return. But many never did. Fatima was only 10 years old when her village was emptied. She held her mother's hand tight. She asked, "Where are we going?" Her mother didn't answer. They walked for hours, then days. They crossed fields, borders, memories. Fatima never saw her home again. The years passed, but the pain stayed. Palestinians lived in refugee camps. Tents turned into houses. Houses turned into cities, but without a country. And in Israel, the people built fast. Roads, schools, an army, a flag. 2 peoples, 1 land, and a wound that grew deeper each year. Wars came. In 1967, another war changed everything again. Israel took more land, the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem. More Palestinians were displaced. More anger, more fear, more loss. And soon the word conflict became part of daily life. Checkpoints, bombs, walls, sirens, marches, rockets, prayers. children grew up hearing not lullabies, but the sound of war. They learned words like occupation, settlements, resistance, before they learned to ride a bike. But even in the darkest times, some still hoped. In 1993, there was a handshake, a small moment, 2 leaders, 1 dream, peace. For a moment, the world held its breath. Could it happen? Could they finally share the land? But peace is hard. It needs trust. And time passed. But peace did not grow. More violence, more hate, more broken promises. And today, the conflict still burns. A young boy in Gaza draws pictures of a home he's never seen. An old man in Jerusalem visits the grave of his son, lost in war. A girl in Tel Aviv listens to sirens and hides in fear. A mother in Ramallah whispers a prayer every night. Let my children live. This is not just history. It is now. It is pain and pride and memory and hope. It is the sound of 2 peoples, each saying, "This land is mine." And both telling the truth. Can one land belong to 2 hearts? Can one sky cover 2 dreams? No one has the answer yet, but the question still waits. Chapter 9. Oil, Wars, and Revolution. It started deep in the ground, black, thick, burning, oil. For centuries it was hidden beneath the sand. Then one day, people found it, and the world changed. At first, no one understood how powerful it was, but soon machines needed it. Cars, planes, factories. The modern world ran on oil, and the Middle East, it had a lot of it. Suddenly, deserts became gold mines, kings became rich, nations grew powerful, but with money came something else. Greed, fear, war. In Iran, people looked at their land and at the oil under it. Much of that oil was controlled by British companies. The people asked, "Why do foreigners take our wealth?" One leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, stood up. He said, "The oil belongs to us." And he took it back. For a moment, the people cheered. Hope was alive, but not for long. In 1953, Mossadegh was removed, by force, with help from the British and the Americans. A king returned to power, the Shah. He ruled with money and fear. He built tall buildings, wore fine suits. But behind the lights, people were watching, waiting. In 1979, Iran exploded. Not with bombs, but with revolution. Millions marched in the streets. Men, women, students, workers. They shouted, "Down with the Shah." They wanted freedom. They wanted faith. They wanted something new, and they got it. A man named Ayatollah Khomeini became the new leader. The Shah was gone, and Iran became an Islamic republic. Some cried with joy. Some cried with fear. The world held its breath. Across the border, in Iraq, another man watched. His name was Saddam Hussein. He wore a uniform. He gave long speeches. He ruled with iron fists. And he had plans. In 1980, Iraq invaded Iran. A long, bloody war began. 8 years. Millions dead or wounded. Cities destroyed. Children lost. Dreams broken. And when it ended, there was no winner. Only pain. But Saddam did not stop. In 1990, he looked at a small, rich neighbor, Kuwait. He wanted its oil. He wanted control. And he took it. Invasion. This time, the world answered. The United States and many others sent troops. It was called the Gulf War. Planes flew. Tanks rolled. Bombs fell like rain. Iraq was pushed back. But the land burned, and the people suffered. A boy named Hassan stood outside his home in Baghdad. The sky was dark with smoke. He asked his mother, "Why do they fight, Mama?" She held him close. "They fight for power, my son, but we just want peace." Years later, war returned. In 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq again, this time to remove Saddam Hussein. They said he had dangerous weapons. They said they wanted to free the people. Saddam was captured, later executed. But freedom didn't come easily. Violence filled the streets. Factions fought each other. Explosions shook markets, schools, mosques. A country was broken. Again. And the people asked, "Is this peace?" Oil had brought money, but it also brought invasion, dictators, division. And while leaders made deals, the people kept living, working, raising families, burying the dead, hoping for a better day. In other parts of the Middle East, change was rising too. In Egypt, in Libya, in Syria. The people stood up. They marched. They shouted, "Enough!" It was called the Arab Spring. A wave of protest. A call for freedom. A cry for dignity. Some governments fell. Some fought back with fire. And again, the streets filled with smoke. Revolutions are not easy. They carry dreams and danger. But still, the people moved forward, step by step. In the shadows of oil fields, in the ruins of war, voices still rise. A girl in Tehran writes poems in secret. A man in Basra fixes cars for free. A mother in Mosul plants flowers where bombs once fell. Not for power, but for peace. Because in the end, most people do not want war. They do not want gold or guns. They want food, safety, home, and a future for their children. Oil gave power to the land. But the people? They carry something greater. Courage. Chapter 10. Voices of the Future. The Middle East is old. Its cities are older than memory. Its rivers have seen kings rise and fall. Its land is full of stories, some beautiful, some painful. And today, the story continues. There is still struggle. Borders still bring tension. Some governments are strong, but not always fair. Some people live free. Others still wait. There are wars, walls, wounds that have not healed. But that is not the whole story, because something else is rising. Voices. In the streets of Cairo, a young woman films a protest with her phone. In Beirut, a boy plays guitar on a broken balcony. In Tehran, students read poems about love and hope. In Gaza, a little girl paints flowers on the wall of her home, even after the bombs. And in every country, young people are speaking, not with hate, not with fear, but with dreams. I want to study. I want to vote. I want to feel safe when I walk home at night. I want to be heard. These are the voices of the future, not kings, not armies, just people asking for a better life. A girl named Mira lives in Amman, Jordan. She wakes early, walks to school. She wants to become a doctor. Her father says, "Why medicine?" And she answers, "Because I want to heal something." He smiles. He nods. He understands. She's not only talking about bodies, she's talking about the world. In Tunisia, a young man runs a small cafe. He brews coffee, plays music, listens to stories. One day, an old man asks, "Why don't you leave?" The boy shrugs. Because someone has to stay. Someone has to build something here. Change is not fast and not easy, but it is coming in small ways. Girls going to school, new laws being written, songs about peace sung loud. And the internet? It connects people across borders, across beliefs. They talk, share, organize, dream. But the past is still here, always. It sits like a shadow in the corner of the room. It whispers, "Remember the wars, the pain, the broken promises." And the people say, "Yes, we remember." But they also say, "We are not only our past." The Middle East is not just conflict, not just oil, not just headlines. It is people, mothers, teachers, poets, farmers, singers, doctors, builders, students, millions of lives, each with a name, a face, a story, and each one is writing the next chapter. In Istanbul, a journalist types through the night. In Baghdad, a mother bakes bread for her children. In Haifa, two friends, one Arab, one Jewish, laugh as they walk to school. And somewhere, a child is born. The stars above them are old, but their eyes are full of something new. What will the future be? No one knows. Will there be peace? Will the walls come down? Will the lines on maps become less important than the people who live between them? Maybe. But one thing is sure. The voices are louder now, stronger, and they are not going away. The past is heavy. Yes, but the future is still unwritten, and it belongs